The Dialogue Arts Project is a not-for-profit organization dedicated to using creative writing and the performing arts as a way to generate difficult dialogue and educational spaces around issues of social identity. The origin comes from my experience as a high school teacher about several years ago. I taught a creative writing class, and a big component of that course was to invite guest writers, so musicians and actors and a lot of poets into the room. What started to happen is I noticed the content that artists were bringing into the room started to ask really difficult questions of kids. Not only were students becoming more and more excited about writing, but the content that existed in students' questions and in their sort of inquiry points while artists were there was very, very unique. Students were more empowered to ask questions pertaining to difficult issues of race and gender and sexuality and religion and social class. There is a dire need for people to access conversations about social identity. Sort of out of that came this idea of, if we're transforming this space, what is the potential for this very same thing to transform similar spaces outside of a public school classroom in the middle of Brooklyn? Because there is something about what art has the potential to do.
Doing a lot of stuff that in different environments and different age groups that supposedly address diversity or identity or race. And I feel like none of them really dig into the real issues that are involved, and I know from your work that you really do that, and as an educator you do as well, so I'm excited to see this as something that people can actually do to really dig into the issues.
Thank you. What has become the Dialogue Arts Project is loosely built around a curriculum that we've created that uses creative writing and performing arts as a way to generate participant-created art and participant reflection that in turn leads to intergroup dialogue. So there's three major steps of the curriculum. The first step is to look at a social identity grid that asks people what it means to walk around in the world and carry sort of a multitude of identities in you that are constantly churning and competing with each other, and why that matters.
I started hearing all of these voices throughout my life that have told me that I'm overreacting or being super sensitive to these specific categories, these specific identities. The identity of being a black female, a young black female, a young black American female, all these different identities, because it is what I live with every single day.
I think it was kind of hard to separate myself from the fact that I live a completely different life, and I've lived a completely different life, worlds apart from where, you know, my students are living right now. So I found that to be the strongest influence.
Absolutely. The second part is an actual creative writing workshop, where participants in these workshops really sort of get their hands dirty, so to speak, with the actual writing that we're working with. So we're going to break it down and do a little bit of a writing workshop, and we have a very special guest with us who's going to actually perform the piece of writing that is the first workshop in this larger curriculum.
Lauren Ashley Whitehead. It's like everything is white because it is. It's like being black because you are, and it's just like that. So get used to it.
Then there's about a half an hour where there's a really in-depth, very, very structured workshop that participants respond to and create through the lens of a social identity of their choosing. People sort of spread out all over the place, and they just write for about a half an hour in response to the particular prompt in some sort of powerful, empathic reflection in relationship to the piece of writing. Once the creative writing part of the session is through, the group reconvenes. We sort of share a couple of those pieces out loud as a larger group, but ultimately the third and final part, and in many ways the most important part, is the intergroup dialogue that takes place, wherein participants break up into small group dialogue where we use the art as sort of a springboard into conversations about ourselves.
I have a hard time setting up a conversation where we're like both speaking and listening. Because I'm like quickly on the offensive.
A lot of the time, that's really the hardest part about expressing how you really feel or digging into the conversation is wanting to be true to who you are and what you're about, but not being sure that you're going to measure up to.
Right.
Doing this was really, I really appreciate that this exists now, because it had been really hard for me and I hadn't written about it.
It's a powerful acknowledgement. I find that it is very infrequent that people are unwilling to give art a chance. right? I feel like the window for human beings to engage with and respond to art is massive. If nothing else, sort of leveling the playing field and making people feel more comfortable accessing difficult dialogue. That it is changing a conversation that institutions have been dying to change. So the Dialogue Arts Project is built around that notion, that instead of approaching diversity with gloves on as though it's this sort of vocabulary word we need to sort of cut and pick apart with steak knives, it's a deeper understanding of what we need to do in our own lives to examine our respective paths that have landed us here. And I think that's one of the things that using sort of art as a medium between that and creating this common experience is what we at the Dialogue Arts Project are really striving for.